Welcome to Preeminent Test Prep. Today is day 7 in our 90-day SAT preparation series. So today we'll be doing 30 minutes in the math section and then switching over to do 30 minutes in the SAT reading section. So today we're going to start with practice test 3. We'll be doing questions 1 through 8 on the math no calculator section and then questions 1 through 8 on the math with calculator section. So as I go through each question, write all of your work in your workbook, and anything that I say that you should take notes or as a tip, strategy, or pattern, make sure to put that in your notebook. So things that should go in the notebook, I'll make sure that I tell you before I say them or after I say them, and then everything else will just go in the workbook. So as I go through each question, any strategy that I have, so any tips or tricks or patterns or setups that you can use to save time, I'll tell those to you. Make sure you put them in your notebook. So let's go ahead and get started with question 1. A painter will paint n walls with the same size and shape in a building using a specific brand of paint. The painter's fee can be calculated by the expression NKLH. Okay, so see how I'm underlining our term n walls, right? Because that's a variable. So we underline variables, we underline equations and what they mean. The painter's fee is represented by this expression. Then we have a variable, n is the number of walls, k is a constant with units of dollars per square foot. We always underline units as well. L is the length of each wall in feet. That's a measurement. We underline that as well. H is the height of each wall in feet. So in feet, that's a measurement. We're going to underline that. Then we need to underline what we're asked to answer with. So that's if the customer asks the painter to use a more expensive brand of paint, which of the factors in the expression will change? Well, if we're using a more expensive brand of paint, then is our length going to change? No, so L won't change. Is our number of walls going to change? No. Is our height going to change? No. But K, our cost in units of dollars per square foot, that will change. That constant of dollars per square foot will change. So our answer there is going to be C for number 1. All right, number 2. If 3r equals 18, what is the value of 6r plus 3? So once again, we got to make sure that we're answering with that what is 6r plus 3. If you saw yesterday's video, I talked about how we always need to make sure that we pay attention to what the end of the question is. Because we see it's 6r plus 3, more than likely whatever r is equal to is going to have an answer choice here, but that's wrong because we need to answer with what 6r plus 3 is. So what jumps out to me right away is I have 6r here, and I see I have 3r here. So I know if I double 3r, right, so if I double 18 as well, I double each side, then I'm going to have 6r is equal to 18 times 2, which is 36, right? So now I just have to add 3 to that to get my answer, because I have 6r. We know 6r is 36. We add 3 to each side. We get 39 as our answer. So our answer there is going to be D. All right, question 3. Or hang on, let me go back. So what I would put in your notes here, you already have this end trick, right, from yesterday. I told you to put that in your notes. So what I would add in your notes for number 2 is this right here. This, if 3r equals 18 and then you're asked for the value of something that's double or triple that, then what you're going to want to do is instead of solving for r, because that's going to take more steps, just make sure you go ahead and double, triple, quadruple, or halve, or take a third of whatever is in this if statement, right? So that's what you should put in your notes. You can put in this example if you want, this if 3r equals 18 and you're asked for 6r to double 3r to get there quicker. But that's really what you're going to want to notice there. That's the big strategy with questions like these, is if you have something like 6r or 9r or 12r, or say it was 1.5r, then you're going to take whatever factor you use to get from 3r to 6r, and you're going to apply it to this 18 in order to get that, right? And then you just have to add 3 to it. So that's the big tip for number 2. So you can put that in your notes if you would like. And then we've got number 3, which of the following is equal to a raised to the power of 2/3 for all values of a. Make sure you put this in your notes. So we didn't cover this in our equations list, but you need to know it. So make sure you put this in your notes. I'm going to teach it right now. So if we have a to the power of 2/3, then we know that that is going to equal our third root of a squared, right? So whatever is in our denominator, in our exponent, right? So we have a raised to the power of 2/3. Whatever is in our denominator is what our root will be. And whatever is in our numerator is going to be what goes inside of that root, right? So an example that you could put in your notes would be, let me use a again. What you should put in your notes is a to the power of xy is going to equal the y root of a to the x power. So that right there should go in your notes. You can put that by your math equations is what I would prefer you to do. So make sure you put that by your math equations, because I forgot to teach that one on the math equations. But yep, so right here, there's really going to be no tricks. It's just looking at the question, seeing we're asked for what's equal to a raised to the power of 2/3, and knowing that we're going to have the third root of a squared. So our answer there is going to be D. So not really any tricks for that one. Just make sure that you memorize this right here, this equation that I put down. So answer to 3 will be D. We can move on to question 4. The number of states that joined the United States between 1776 and 1849, that's a time, so we underline that in the word problem, is twice the number of states that joined between 1850 and 1900. If 30 states joined the United States between 1776 and 1849, and X states joined between 1850 and 1900, which of the following equations is true? All right, so with an equation or with a question like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through and I'm going to write my equation as I go down the words, right? So I have the number of states joining between 1776 and 1789. I'm going to go ahead and label all of that. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this bracket here around it, and I'm going to put a bracket here, and then I'm going to write bracket to bracket equals X, right? That way I don't have to rewrite everything by naming my variable. I know that this X is going to be the states that joined between 1776 and 1849. So that's a trick you can put in your notes if you would like, is to save time writing, use brackets, and then state that it's equal to a variable. All right, so we're told that that's twice the number of states that joined between 1850 and 1900. Well, if that's twice the number that joined between 1850 and 1900, I'll use parentheses for the number of states that joined between 1850 and 1900. And we know that that then must be parentheses times 2 is equal to X, right? Because the number of states that joined between 1776 and 1849, which is X, is 2 times the number that joined between 1850 and 1900, which is these parentheses here. All right, so that's what I'll use there. Now, which of the following equations is true? And we are told that, or I'm sorry, I shouldn't have been using X right here. Or hang on a minute, let me take a look. So we've got, if 30 states joined between 1776 and 1849, okay. Yep, so I shouldn't have been using X because I didn't see that X was stated as a variable. We don't want to use, if something's stated as a variable, then we want to be using what it's stated as. And X right here is stated as the number of states that joined between 1850 and 1900, which means it would go here, right? So this is going to equal 30 because it says 30 states joined the United States between 1776 and 1849. So that's my bad on that one, but we've got then 2x equals 30, as you can see. Right, so that was on me. I should have read further into the question before labeling my x there. So we see we have if 30 states joined between 1776 and 1849, right? So that was this right here. Our parentheses was the number of states that joined between 1776 and 1849. Then we know that that is equal to 2 times the number that joined between our parentheses, which we said was the states joining between 1850 and 1900. So the correct answer here is going to be B, 2x equals 30. All right, question 5. If 5 over x equals 15 over x plus 20, what is the value of x over 5? All right, well, in order to solve for this one, what jumps right out to me is we're going to have to solve for x over 5. So the first thing that I would check is if I can flip my 5 and my over x to get an answer. Now, in this case, I cannot, because if I flipped them, then I would just end up with x over 5. I have x is equal to 15 and 5 is equal to x plus 20, which is not true, so I can't do that. So then the next thing I'm going to look to do is to get this 15 on this side equal to this 5 over here. So to do that, I'm going to multiply by 3 over 3 because it has to be 1, right? If I'm only going to multiply one side of my equation and not the other, it has to be by 1. So I'm going to multiply that side by 3 over 3, right? So 3 times 5 then is going to give me 15, and 3 times x will give me 3x. So now I have 15 over 3x is going to equal 15 over x plus 20. In order for this statement to be true, that means that 3x will have to equal x plus 20. Now I can go through and solve. I'm going to subtract x from each side. That's going to give me 2x is equal to 20. Then I divide each side by 2. Divide each side by 2. I get 10. Is that my answer? Absolutely not. Why? Because I need to pay attention to what the end of the question says. I'm asked for the value of x plus 5, right? See how many questions you're going to get wrong if you don't pay attention to the end. You're going to get so many wrong. Just by paying attention to the end, you're not going to miss simple points, right? So now we know that 10 is x. So now I do 10 over 5, which is equal to 2. So my answer there is going to be C. So for number 5, our answer is going to be C. So the thing that you should put in your notebook for number 5 would be, first of all, if you're asked for the value of a reciprocal, see if you can get it just by flipping it. If you can't, which in this case you could not, then you're going to want to find this number, set it equal to this number, right? And that's kind of particular to this problem. So really the big thing that you're going to want to have in is if you're asked to find the reciprocal of something, go ahead and flip it, see if you can find the answer that way. If not, then look for multiplying or dividing by a number to get to that answer quicker. So also, once again, just reiterating this big message here, pay attention to the end of the question. That's huge. You should already have that in your notes from yesterday, but if not, make sure it's there. All right, question 6. So we've got a stacked equation. So with stacked equations, what I'm always looking to do, and this should go in your notebook, I don't even have to read the question. Whenever there's a stacked equation, I always want to do this. Put this in your notes. I'm always looking to add or subtract my bottom equation or my top equation to eliminate a variable. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a direct quote to put in your notes because I think this is so important. When you have stacked equations, so when stacked equations, comma, try to add or subtract, I'm going to erase that, try to add or subtract to eliminate one variable and solve for the other. Or you may have to multiply. You may have to multiply. So I'm going to put have to multiply or divide one equation or both. Usually just one. It's very rare, I think, that I've ever seen you have to multiply and divide both of them to do this. But you can look to multiply or divide one equation or both, then add or subtract. So then add or subtract as well to get rid of one of the variables. And then add this as well, and you'll see this in this problem. Also, if asked for something like x plus y, x minus y, negative y minus x, anything like that, look to add or subtract once again. Look to add or subtract to get to that in order to do it. If it's a stacked column, that's really what they're looking for you to be able to do, because that's basically the trick, instead of going through and finding x and then finding y. So once again, look to add or subtract to get your answer. To get answer. All right, so you should have all that in your notes. I talked very slowly as I went through that. I'm actually going to leave it there because I don't know if I'll ever come back to this. And if I do, I don't want to have to rewrite that whole quote. So I'm going to solve my equation in some space on my left side of my screen here. Or I'll just do it up here. That's the other thing. Put this in your notes as well if you want, or just make sure you remember it, is if we see stacked equations, we're not going to rewrite them all. We're just going to draw a line here and do it up here. So I'll zoom in to try to get it a little bit better so you can see. So whenever there's stacked equations, I never rewrite them. I just work right here. So the question is, if xy is a solution to the system of equations above, what is the value of x minus y? All right, so what I'm looking to do is to get x minus y. I'm not looking to eliminate one variable in this particular situation because I'm asked for x minus y. If I was asked for the value of x or for the value of y or negative x, then I'd be looking to eliminate my other variable that I don't need, right? But in this case, I need x minus y. So what I'm going to look to do is to end with x minus y. But the thing is, when I look at this, I see I can't do that, because if I was to add my equations, then I would have 5x. If I was to subtract my equations, then I would have negative x, and then I would also have a negative x. Right? If I was to subtract, I would have negative x, and then over here I'd have a minus y still. So I can't multiply by -1 to get x minus y there either. So I know what I'm going to have to do here is look for something else. So then when I look at this, the thing that I notice is I have a 2 here, a 2 here, a 3 here, and a 3 here. Well, that means that if I were to add them, right, if I were to add them, let me draw that. If I were to add them, then I'm going to have a 5x and then a minus 5y. So if I do that, I have 5x minus 5y, right? And I was to factor out 5, then I have x minus y. So I'll go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to have negative 14 minus 6, which gives me negative 20. Now, in this case, I'm going to rewrite it over here. I wouldn't recommend you do that. I'm just doing it so you can see better. Right? So now I'm going to go ahead and factor out my 5. So now I have 5x minus y is equal to 5 times -4. I cancel my 5's, and I see that x minus y is equal to -4, which is what the end of my answer, or end of my question is asking. So my answer there will be C. All right, next question is question number 7. Zoom out here, got question 7. So hopefully you got that in your notes with the stacked equations. The stacked equations setup is huge for me. I think it saves you a lot of time, so I would make sure that you have that in your notes. For sure, for certain. That shows up a fair amount. All right, so question 7, the function f is defined by a polynomial. Some values of x and f of x are shown in the table above. Which of the following must be a factor of f of x? Well, factors are where f of x equals 0, right? So factor, a factor, and if you don't have this in your notes, you should, because we talked about it with parabolas, but if you don't, put it in there. A factor is where there is an x-intercept, right? X-intercept. So that'll be where y equals 0. So f of x equals 0. That's the same as y equals 0. That's at x equals 4, which means our factor is x minus 4. Why is it x minus 4? Because when x minus 4 is set equal to 0, we see that x is going to equal 4 because we add 4 to each side. So our correct answer there is going to be C for number 7. All right, number 8. The line y equals kx plus 4, where k is a constant, is graphed in the xy plane. If equation, we're going to underline it, k constant. If the line contains the point CD, where C can't equal 0, D can't equal 0, what is the slope of the line in terms of C and D? All right, well, our slope we know is going to be our rise over our run. Now we see we have plus 4 as our y-intercept, so our rise then is going to be whatever D is, because that's our y, right? So whatever D is, since that's our y variable, minus that 4 that we're starting with, all over how much we ran from 0 as our x, right? So that's going to be whatever C is. So our correct answer here is going to be D minus 4 over C, which is answer choice A. So A will be our answer to 8. And now we're going to switch over to the math with calculator section for questions 1 through 8. So let's go ahead and do that. Switch over to the math with calculator section. And we will start right here. Okay, question 1. So we've got a graph. We want to pay attention to our axes. We see our axes are distance from campsite in miles, and then we have time on our x-axis. Title is Marilyn's hike. So now we go ahead and get into our question. The graph above shows Marilyn's distance from her campsite during a 3-hour hike. Once again, underlining times. She stopped for 30 minutes during her hike to have lunch. Based on the graph, which of the following is closest to the time she finished lunch and continued her hike? We want to pay attention to the verbs in this, which are finished and continued her hike. So when is she finishing lunch? Well, when she starts eating lunch, she stops, which means her distance from her campsite will not change. But we're asked for when she finishes lunch and then starts her hike again. So that's going to be right here. She finishes lunch, then she starts moving once again. So that's going to be at about 1:40 p.m. So our answer there is going to be C. What to put in your notes for this one would be to make sure you're paying attention to verbs in word problems like this. So if it's a word problem where we are given a graph and it's someone's position or someone's velocity, pay attention to the verbs on what you're at the end of that question, right? So the verbs in the end of the question, pay attention to those. That's going to give you the key to where you want to look on the graph. All right, question 2. We've got the table above shows the distribution of age and gender for 25 people who entered a contest. If the contest winner is selected at random, now make sure you always pay attention to how the winner is being selected, because sometimes it will have a criteria. For example, it could be if a female-only winner is selected at random, or a male-only winner, or an under 40 or 40 or older winner. So always make sure you're paying attention to that if statement as well. If statements are important on the SAT math section. So here we're told that it's going to be at random. Then we're told what is the probability that the winner will be either. Okay, so this is big as well. Pay attention to words like either when you're asked a question. It can be either, it can be or. Pay attention to the difference, right? It can be either, it can be or, it could be that both, anything like that, pay attention to. So what is the probability the winner will be either a female under age 40 or a male 40 or older? Well, men 40 or older is 2, and females under 40 is 8, so we need to add them since we're doing an or, right? So it's going to be 8 plus 2 is 10. We know that there are 25 people total, so the probability will be 10 out of 25 since this is indeed random. So the answer there is going to be B. All right, so one other thing you could put in your notes for number 2 would just be when you're dealing with a table and you're given which criteria from the table you need to draw on, I would recommend boxing it or circling it or underlining it, something like that, so you can kind of see what you need to draw from the table, and it makes it a lot more concise and easy to read. So that's one thing that you can put in your notes if you would like. All right, question 3. The graph below shows the total number of music album sales in millions each year from 1997 through 2009. We see on our y-axis we have sales in millions, and our x-axis is years since 1997. Right, so that means at 3 we're going to have 2000, and at 12 we're going to have 2009. Based on the graph, which of the following best describes the general trend in music album sales from 1997 through 2009? Well, we go ahead and see in our graph that we are increasing at first, and then we decrease, right? So at 2000, we switch from increasing to decreasing. So look at our answer choices. We have A, sales generally increased each year since 1997. We see that's wrong because we generally decreased from right here down. Next, we have sales generally decreased each year since 1997. That isn't true because we generally increased at first. And then C, sales increased until 2000, then generally decreased. That is correct. And D, sales generally remained steady. That is false. All right. So that's pretty much a self-explanatory question. Big thing that I would just make sure you're paying attention to. I said this yesterday as well. Pay attention to words such as increased, decreased, or stayed the same, right? Always pay attention to those words because those are important with graphs. So as long as you have that in your notes from yesterday, you're good. Don't have to add anything there. All right, the table above shows some values of the linear function f, which of the following defines f. All right, well, what we're going to do here is we're going to look at our slope. We're going to find our slope, and that's going to give us our answer, right? If not, sometimes it won't always. Sometimes you need to get your slope and then also your y-intercept, but we're going to start with slope because that's easiest. So we see we go from 1 to 2, so we're increasing by 1x, so that goes on the bottom. And we see we go from -2 to 1, which is an increase of 3. Therefore, our slope is 3, right? So we need to have c f of n equals 3n, and we don't have to do anything else for that problem. So our answer there will be C. So once again, like I said yesterday when I was talking about the, I can't remember which problem it was, but I talked about how we want to get rid of wrong answer choices as quickly as possible. That's what I did right here. I didn't even check this -5 because I knew my slope had to be 3, right? And we see that that pattern continues. Going from 2 to 3, we increase by 3 as well. 3 to 4, we go from 4 to 7, which is an increase of 3 as well. Right, so I don't even have to pay attention to what my y-intercept is. I know my answer will be C for number 4. Okay, next up we've got question 5. At Lincoln High School, approximately 7% of juniors and 5% of enrolled seniors were inducted into the National Honor Society last year. There were 562 juniors and 602 seniors enrolled at Lincoln High School each year. Which of the following is closest to the total number of juniors and seniors at Lincoln High School last year who were inducted into the National Honor Society? So key thing here I'm looking at is the total number of juniors and seniors. So I need to do my 7% of juniors, right? I'll do of J times however many juniors there were. It says that there were 562, so times 562 juniors plus my, or I'm sorry, that was 5, okay, yep, it was 7% of juniors. Then we have 5% of seniors, so 5% of seniors multiplied by the 602 seniors, right? And then I'm going to add those together. That's an S, not a 5, that's an S, right? Okay, and then I'm going to add those together to get my answer. So this one is one where we're going to use our calculator because it's going to be quicker. So 7% means I'm going to put in 0.07 into my calculator, multiply it by 562. Then I'm going to add my 0.05, since that's 5%, times 602. And that's going to give me 69.44, which means my correct answer here will be 69 because I'm going to round it. All right, so that'll be 69 as my answer. So my answer there is going to be answer choice B. All right, moving on to question 6. We've got, once again, we have stacked equations. So stacked equations means we're going to want to avoid rewriting. So I'm going to zoom in. If this was paper pencil, it's a lot easier, but with this Microsoft OneNote, I have to really zoom in if I want to get it. And I'm actually going to switch my pen to one that's smaller really quick as well, so you can see better. All right. So which of the following is the sum of the two polynomials shown? So since I'm just asked for the sum, I don't even have to multiply or anything. I can just go ahead and add. All right. So I'll put a plus sign here so you see what I'm doing. And I can even put my answer down here. With paper pencil, I would put it right here, but I can't do that because I'm not using paper pencil. If I were you, I'd put it there. If you can't fit it there, just put it down here. So we got 3x squared plus 5x squared, that's 8x squared. Then we have minus 5x plus negative 2x, which is the same as minus 5x minus 2x, that's going to be minus 7x. And then I go ahead and look at my answer choices, and I can actually go ahead and find my answer choice of A, because I don't even have to do this 2 and this negative 6, because this one right here is plus 7x, and I know that that's wrong. So my answer there is going to be A for number 6. Right? If I really wanted to check my work, I would see that 2 plus negative 6 is 2 minus 6, which is minus 4. So I can do the full thing, but I just don't need to because I can get rid of my wrong answer choices and select the correct answer choice. So I'm going to say for that one, same tip I had with stacked equations before, always be looking to add or subtract to get to your answer the fastest. So that's the big thing there. Make sure with stacked equations you're not rewriting it either. If you're rewriting a stacked equation, you're wasting your time. They stack it so you can quickly put this line underneath it. and then put your answer either right below it right here where I say here, or right here where I have that arrow pointing. So stacked equations, don't rewrite them. It's going to waste your time. Make sure that you're using addition and subtraction to get to your answer the fastest with them, right? And sometimes that means you have to multiply and divide one or both equations and then add or subtract. So that's the big tip there. So now we've got question 7. Looks like I got all of those. Yep, so question 7. All right, so I'm asked for the value of w given that if 3 over 5 w equals 4 over 3, what's the value of w? Well, if I need to get w alone and I have 3 over 5, I have to multiply by the reciprocal. Keep in mind the reciprocal just means I'm flipping my denominator to my numerator and then my numerator to my denominator. So I do that, that's going to give me w. Now what I do to one side, I have to do the other since this isn't 1, right? If this were 1, right, 3 over 3 or 5 over 5, that would be 1, so I wouldn't have to do it to the other side, but it isn't, so I do have to do it to the other side. So now I have 4/3 then, right? That w is going to equal that 4/3 times that same 5 over 3. So what I do here is I do 4 times 5 up top to give me 20, and I do 3 times 3 on the bottom, which is 9, to give me 20 over 9, and that will be my answer, which is going to be D. All right, so for the tips on number 7, the big tip here is if we have to solve for w, right, and w is next to a fraction, we're going to multiply by our reciprocal to both sides. Okay, so if you don't have that in your notes, you could give this as an example problem even, since it's really short. It's not going to take up much space in your notes, so if you wanted to do that, you certainly could. Big thing is if we need to solve for a variable and there's a fraction next to it, we multiply by the reciprocal. So that's the big thing there. All right, moving on to question 8. The average number of students per classroom at Central High School from 2000 to 2010 can be modeled by the equation y equals 0.56x plus 27.2. So that's an equation. We're going to make sure we underline it. We were given a time up here. We're going to underline that as well. We were told the average number of students per classroom is modeled by this equation. I'm going to switch back to my thicker pen as well real quick. All right, so there we go. Where x, we're given a variable, we underline it, represents the number of years since 2000, and y represents the average number of students per classroom. Which of the following best describes the meaning of 0.56 in the context? Well, I'm going to go to my equation. I see that that is my slope because it's by that x, right? So that's going to be how much we're changing per year, since x is the number of years since 2000, right? And the change is going to be, since y is the average number of students per classroom, it's going to be the change in the number of students per classroom every year. So we look at our answer choices. We have A, the total number. We said that that's incorrect. B, the average number of students. That's also incorrect because we're talking about change over time. We have C, the estimated increase in the average number of students per classroom each year, and that will be correct. D, the estimated difference between the average number per classroom in 2010 and in 2000, that is incorrect as well. So that's going to take us through our math section for today. So we can, okay, let me just check one thing. We've got, okay, yep, we're good. So that's going to take us through our SAT math prep for today. So we're going to switch over to the reading section now. So I'll go ahead and do that right now. Okay, for today's reading practice, what we're going to do today is take what's called a diagnostic test. So we will likely do this again on the next reading day. So that'll be not tomorrow, but the day after that, to get more of an idea, to make sure that this isn't a fluke, right? So what a diagnostic test is you're going to have 13 minutes to go through this reading passage and then answer the questions. Then after that, you're going to be given pretty much as much time as you want. So you can either pause the video, or I'm going to give you about 7 minutes after the 13 minutes before I start talking again. So we have a total of 20 minutes where I'm not talking. That first 13 minutes is going to be you trying to complete every question in that 13 minutes to the best of your ability. So try to answer every question. Then I'm going to say your 13 minutes is up, at which point you should switch to a pen if you're using a pencil, or use a different colored pen. Then go back through and take as much time as you want, right? So until all your answers are what you believe that the correct answers are, and mark those answers then in a different color if they're different, or you can leave them the same if they're the same. Then after that, you can resume the video. It'll be at about 50 minutes, or it'll basically be 7 minutes after that 13 minutes, so 20 minutes into the reading section as a whole. And I will go ahead and give my tips for this reading passage, right, and reading questions as basically, so any tips I have for question types, things like that, as well as the correct answers, and you'll go through and you'll grade your passage. And then what you'll be able to determine from that is whether you struggled with finding the correct answer or whether you struggle with time. Because if you could find the correct answers with that extra time, then your problem's time. And if you found that you answered the questions inaccurately and you answered them the same when you were given extra time as during those 13 minutes, then your problem is going to be accuracy. So this is really the big thing with the reading section today, is we're going to be determining if your problem is accuracy or time. And then after that, I'll give you my tips for this passage and question types on this passage, tips for the reading section as well. So let's go ahead and get started. The link is in the description to SAT Practice Test 1, which is what this passage is from. Keep in mind, this is questions 11 through 21 from SAT Practice Test 1. So follow that link in the description and go take this. Your 13 minutes starts now. So I will be silent for these 13 minutes, and I'll tell you when the 13 minutes is up, at which point you'll switch to a different colored pen or pencil. So time starts now. Alright, so that was about 14 minutes there. So that was 1 more minute than 13, so you got a little bit extra time there. So that was about 14 minutes. So now you're going to have about probably, I'll give you about 7 more minutes before I start talking and going over the answer explanations. Or actually, I'm just going to give you about 5, because if you need more time than that, just pause it. So really just start watching again in about 5 minutes. If you need more time than that 5 minutes, be sure of your answers, take it, just pause the video and come back when you're done. And in about 5 minutes, I'll go over the answers. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and get into the answers for all of our questions, as well as some tips that I have for the SAT reading section. So what you're going to do is you're going to score your diagnostic test based on that 13 minutes, which actually turned into 14 minutes. That was my fault. I should have stopped you 1 minute earlier, but 14 minutes versus 13 minutes isn't going to make a big difference here. We're really just kind of looking at the big difference between you having that extra however long you took to fill in the rest of the answers, make sure that they were the ones that you were most comfortable with, and the amount that you had under those 13 minutes. It's not going to be a big difference between them. So I'll go ahead and start going through our answer explanations. Make sure you grade both your timed reading section answers as well as your untimed. So when you took that extra time, when you changed your answers, if you changed your answers, then make sure you're grading both of them. All right, so question 1, the authors most likely use the examples in lines 1 through 9 of the passage to highlight what? Well, we want to come up with our own answer first, and it directs us to lines 1 through 9, so that's where we're going to go. So we're asked for the purpose, right? The purpose of lines 1 through 9. What is the function of that? So this is a function type of question. Well, we see that we have every day millions of shoppers are hitting the stores. We're talking about how much money is spent on gifts at retail stores, finding the perfect gift, and then all of these gift-giving opportunities. So we're really talking about the frequency or the recurring gift giving, right? So how often this gift giving has happened. It's happening a lot. It's frequent. It's a lot of gift giving, right? So the regularity with which people are shopping for gifts is what we're talking about in lines 1 through 9. So A will be our answer there. B, recent increase in the amount of money spent on gifts? No, because we're not talking about changes from prior years to now, so we can't say it's a recent increase. C, we have anxiety gift shopping causes for consumers. No, we don't touch on anxiety that it causes, so we can get rid of C. D, the number of special occasions involving gift giving. This is too narrow, right? We're focusing too much on that last sentence, not enough on the beginning, right? We want to see the big picture, right? We want lines 1 through 9 and how they fit into the big picture. They fit into the big picture because we're talking about the regularity with which people shop for gifts. We'd be being too narrow if we selected D. Question 12, in line 10, the word ambivalent most nearly means, well, we're going to go to line 10, read the lines that are just before and just after as well to get a better idea of context. So we'll start right here. This frequent experience of gift giving can engender ambivalent feelings in gift givers. Many relish the opportunity to buy presents, so that means that they see it as a positive because it offers an opportunity to build stronger bonds with one's closest peers. At the same time, many dread the thought of buying gifts, right? So that's conflicting, those two conflicting ideas. One is positive, it builds stronger bonds, and then the opposite is negative. So we have a positive and a negative, those are conflicting, which means ambivalent must mean conflicted, right? Or a word similar to that. If it isn't conflicted, we're going to look for a word that would also fit with something similar to conflicted, but we see we do have conflicted. Answer will be B. A is incorrect because we don't touch on the reality of it or not, right? In this case, ambivalent, right? It's used kind of to, generally ambivalent would be something that's kind of neutral, but in this case it's conflicted because we talked about how there are positives and negatives. We're not talking about apprehensive because they're still doing it. They're still excited to do it, even though they are a little bit fearful of what the recipient will respond with, right? And then we have D, supportive, and that is incorrect because it's really just not even close. So we can get rid of that. 13, we have the author indicates that people value gift giving because they feel it what? Well, if we go back to our text, we know that in lines 10, we said that they value gift giving because they relish the opportunity to buy presents because it offers a means to build stronger bonds with one's closest peers. So as I glanced down, I also saw that the next question was evidence. So I'm guessing the evidence for that's going to be from 10 to 13 because that's where we talk about it being an opportunity to strengthen a relationship. Answer choice D, serving to strengthen a relationship. And we see we have lines 10 to 13 as well. So why is A wrong? Functioning as a form of self-expression because we don't talk about it being a form of self-expression. We can get rid of that. That's an off-topic type of incorrect answer choice. B is an inexpensive way to show appreciation. No, because we talk about them being expensive, gift givers giving expensive gifts. And then we have C, so that's actually a reverse relationship, would be what that one is. It's also just incorrect and unsupported, so that's also a type of incorrect answer choice that is. C, require the gift recipient to reciprocate. We don't touch upon it being reciprocated, so that's off topic. All right, and then 14, we got A already. And then 15, the social psychologist mentioned in paragraph 2 would likely describe the deadweight loss phenomenon as what? Well, let's go back, take a look at it a little bit. We got social psychologists in paragraph 2. We talk about it being a positive social process. We have economists that talk about there being deadweight loss. And then we talk about the deadweight loss suggesting that gift givers are not very good at predicting what gifts the others will appreciate, which is not surprising to social psychologists, right? So that deadweight loss is not surprising. So we go down which means it's predictable, right? It's predictable, it's not surprising. So that's what that's going to be. That's going to be A. Right? We don't talk about it being questionable. We talk about it being predictable. We don't talk about it being disturbing because we're not making a value judgment on it. And we don't talk about it being unprecedented because they say that it's predictable. They said it's not surprising, so it wouldn't be unprecedented. Unprecedented would be surprising, and they said it's not surprising. Question 16, the passage indicates that the assumptions made by gift givers in lines 41 to 44 may be. Well, we're going to go to lines 41 to 44 and try to determine the assumption made by gift givers. All right, well, in 41, we see that we've got gift givers equate how much they spend, as I'm guessing the next word, with how much recipients will appreciate the gift. Right? So they're equating the value, the monetary value, with how much a gift giver will appreciate the gift. And the passage indicates that that assumption may be what? I'm guessing my next question's evidence, and it is. Right? So the passage is indicating that that is incorrect, and I'll go ahead and show you where I have evidence for that as well. If we think back to it was about line 63, I believe, right here towards the end of this paragraph, we have this right here. This is the big statement from this paragraph. As for gift recipients, they may not construe smaller and larger gifts, so monetary value, as representing smaller and larger signals of thoughtfulness and consideration. So they're not conflating the monetary value of a gift with the thoughtfulness of the gift, right? So the appreciation they have does not correspond to the value of the gift. So that's going to be an incorrect assumption that those gift givers are making, and that is supported in lines 63 to 65 because it shows that while gift givers think that the more that they spend on the gift, the more that it will be appreciated, that's actually not the case. All right, so now we got question 18. As used in line 54, convey most nearly means. I'm not even going to look at the answer choices. I'm going to go to line 54, find convey, read before it and after it to get my answer. All right, I want to come into it with my own answer. So we've got, why do gift givers assume that gift price is closely linked to gift recipients' feelings of appreciation? Perhaps givers believe that bigger, more expensive gifts convey stronger signals of thoughtfulness and consideration. So far I would say that's show, demonstrate, or communicate. Those are three words that would be based on this context in place of convey. So show, demonstrate, or communicate would all be great words there. All right. According to, and then we switch topics a bit so we don't have to read on past there because then we're reading into false context that we don't need. It's not false context, it's just context that isn't related to what the word means. So we got show, demonstrate, and communicate. We're going to look for one of those answers. The best one there is communicate, in my opinion. Show is too basic to be used in this passage. So like I said, we've got communicate, so that answer there is going to be D. Most nearly means transport. No, we're not talking about moving physical objects. Counteract, we're not counteracting anything. That one's just way off topic. Exchange, we don't talk about someone getting something back. We're just talking about one person giving to another. We don't talk about getting anything back. So 19, the authors refer to the work by Camerer and others in line 56 in order to do what? Well, we need to go to line 56. So this is a function question. Why is he including this? Well, he's including it because it says gift giving represents a symbolic ritual whereby gift givers attempt to signal positive attitudes toward the intended recipient and their willingness to invest resources in a future relationship. Okay, this is the big part, that willingness to invest resources in a future relationship. They're trying to show that they value that relationship. So we're providing an explanation. We are offering an explanation for why gift givers correlate monetary value with appreciation. So our answer there is going to be offer an explanation. We aren't introducing an argument. We are just offering the explanation for that previous argument that gift givers conflate that monetary value with appreciation. We're not questioning any motives because no motive, or we do have a motive, right? The motive is gift givers are expecting an increased appreciation with monetary value, but we're not questioning that. We are just offering an explanation for why they believe that. So the big part there, questioning, we're not questioning anything. Supporting a conclusion, we're not supporting a conclusion because we're just offering an explanation for why that phenomenon occurs, right? It's not a conclusion, it's just a phenomenon that occurs. So we can get rid of those answer choices. All right, question 20. The graph following the passage offers evidence that gift givers base their predictions of how much a gift will be appreciated on what? Well, let's go back to our passage to see what they base it on. All right, well, we've got our mean appreciation. We see that it's higher for our more expensive gift. We know that our more expensive gift is this lighter shade of gray. So I'm going to put an M there and L here. We see that they expect that the more that they spend on it, the greater it will be appreciated, since our more expensive gift correlates with a higher mean appreciation for the giver. So we know that that's going to be monetary value. All right, so the monetary value of the gift is what they are basing it on, not the appreciation level, right? We can't say, I'll go ahead and show you why these other answer choices are wrong. We can't base a prediction on how much a gift will be appreciated on the appreciation level of the gift recipients, because then it's not a prediction, that's just actually what occurred, it's the result. We can't predict it, or we can't predict how much a gift will be appreciated based on our own desire for the gifts. We never say that in the graph. That can't be supported by the graph. We're talking about the graph here. And then the relationship with the gift recipients, that's not what the graph showed. The graph only showed monetary value. So 21, the authors would likely attribute the differences in gift giver and recipient mean appreciation as represented in the graph to what? Well, we need to know what that relationship is, so we'll go quick check that. We see with recipients, that less expensive gift, that darker shade of gray, they appreciate more than the more expensive gift, whereas with the givers, they associate the more expensive gift with greater appreciation. So that is going to be from an inability to shift perspective. If we remember back in the passage, we talked about how gift givers not being able to shift perspective to being gift recipients prevents them from seeing that monetary value does not correlate with increased appreciation. So we can go ahead and get rid of B. B says an increasingly materialistic culture. We don't touch on that. C, a growing opposition. Right here, this actually, this is a good example of a, if you have any bias, there are questions on the SAT reading section that'll try to lead you with bias, right? So if you were very against increasingly materialistic cultures, then you would be, oh yeah, B has to be right because materialistic cultures are so bad and things like that, right? That would be you leaning into your bias and not paying attention to what the question's asking, what the text supports. So watch out for that as well. There are questions that lean into bias. Don't be biased and pick an answer just because you agree with it personally. C, a growing opposition to gift giving. Nope, graph does not talk about that. And then we've got, or I'm sorry, the authors would likely attribute the differences in gift giver and recipient mean appreciation as represented due to a growing opposition to gift giving. No, we don't talk about that in the passage. D, a misunderstanding of intentions. We don't talk about that in the passage either. So those are both unrelated. All right, so that takes us through day 7, I believe, of 90 days in our SAT preparation series. So you should write down in your notebook or workbook or both how you did on your diagnostic tests. So find out whether you scored higher with more time or not. If you scored significantly higher when you had more time, then that means that pacing is going to be your problem. So timing, making sure you go faster is going to be how you're going to get better. If you did not improve or you got worse with more time, then that's going to tell you that that time is not your problem and accuracy is your problem, so you're going to want to work more on your accuracy. So we're going to probably do another one of these in 2 days from now, so not tomorrow but the next day, just to make sure that sometimes a passage doesn't click with you. So we did a social science one here, we're going to do a science one for the next one, and then that will be the other diagnostic test, so that will kind of give you a better idea. If it's the same with both of those, then you'll have a good idea of whether pacing or accuracy is your problem. And if both of those kind of conflate with each other, then you're going to want to do a third one on your own. I don't think I'm going to give you a third day to do one of those with these preparation lessons. So if those two conflate with each other after that, they likely won't, but if they do, then go ahead and do a third one and then take the 2 out of 3. So if 2 out of 3 of them you needed more time, then timing is going to be your problem. But if on 2 out of 3 of one, 2 out of 3 you struggle with accuracy, accuracy is going to be your problem. But more than likely the second one you're going to have the same problem, whether it's pacing or accuracy. So hope that helped. If it helped, make sure that you can consider donating down in the description. When a donation link's up and running, it will be in the description. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share, and we will have day 8 up tomorrow. So thanks for watching and have a great day.